the other side of the like one side of the bell curve basically. And so the very top is like the most popular things that everybody knows about, and then the tail kind of drifts off and it gets more and more niche.
Yeah.
But like the long tail of the internet is packed with as many things as what's at the top, right? And so it's just as much stuff. It's just much smaller, nicher audiences. But those audiences are still passionate about the things they're passionate about, and will still spend money. So you just have to have be high enough up the long tail to kind of like, Seth Godin will obviously explain this better than I can. He's got books on this stuff, but it's like, even if you're in the long tail, that's still most of the internet, and people could be obsessed with what you do. And it doesn't need to be a lot of people to support you necessarily.
Oh, yeah. That's perfect. I mean, that's like, I like perfumes and fragrances, and I noticed there's an entire like culture of people that are just like collectors and reviewers and historians on it. And I'm like...
And you're like following the most random YouTube channel that nobody watches, but you love it.
Yeah. And those people have, that's the thing about like ego. When I think about it, like we're in a niche field. Like people are like, oh, what's a mixer? Or what's, they may not even know what a producer really is, so I'm just like, what we're doing is pretty niche as well. And I'm like, that's why you can't really have an ego in this business, because it's like, even the most well-known people, no one knows who they are. Like if you tell people like, do you know this person, that person? They'll be like, huh? I don't know. But then they'll figure like, hey, do you know Kanye West? Do you know Pharrell? It's like, yeah. So like, they're the more bigger, well-known like celebrities of like music that necessarily a lot of people may not know about. So like, it's weird to have an ego when you're there to serve music, and also like when you're not really like a micro celebrity, like not really known. So it's like, it's weird to...
And that's what I found, like, meeting people in our industry is like, even like the people that I was intimidated by are just regular humans, and more often than not really easy to schmooze with. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, even the most successful people I've ever met in this business, literally some of them have no plaques, right? Go to their place, not one platinum record, and they can have an entire house full of that, literally. And someone told me, talking about what you do you don't gain anything from talking about your accomplishments. And I was like, wow, you really don't. And I feel like some people do they get caught up in the accolades, and they get caught up in like the success and all this stuff. But I'm like, it's better to be just a good human being and like someone who's fun to work with and talented and all this stuff, than just to have like an ego, like consistently feeding the ego. I feel like, a lot of people want to feel like they made it, like they want some kind of validation that they made it. So they're like, I made it to this point, therefore I'm good enough, and like I belong amongst these people. When theoretically you always belonged amongst those people,
Right, you're here.
Yeah, you're here. I mean, like, what's the percent? I read the percent of like people making money from art is like less than 1%. So like theoretically, if you're a musician, a producer, an artist, and you're paying your bills by making music, you are in a very elite percent of people. I go to these art show fairs, and I'm like, man, here's an artist, and they may have a painting that's like $4,000, but they sell that, they just paid their mortgage. You know what I mean? They successfully have done it. And
yes.
Because I'm like, okay, well, you see people at the pinnacle of their craft, and you're like, well, how did they do that? How did they get there? A lot of it is luck and timing and skill set and all these things. And some things are just, you can't even like make it up. Like I'm reading Al Schmidt's book, right? So Al Schmidt.
Oh, I got to get that.
I got that from the library, Al Schmidt. But his uncle had one of the first independent recording studios in the nation. Like his uncle was like recording like, Art Tatum and like the Andrews Sisters and all these people. I'm like,
wow.
How is it that you are born and someone in your immediate family, your uncle had a recording studio and said, hey, when you're a kid in Brooklyn, go down there and help me work with the microphones and all this stuff. Like you're just like born into a certain kind of luck, like it's insane amount of luck, even for me, I'm like,
Yeah.
wow, how did I get into that? That's just luck. Insane,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah. We talked about your Bruce Sweden experience in the previous episode. People should definitely go check that one out.
Yeah, that was
And
just luck.
and that's amazing. That's such an amazing story, like being able to like, learn from the greatest, or one of the greatest for sure. And like, yeah, I think a lot of what like our insecurity is about, and the reason why we need validation is like the education system and kind of, like getting tested and graded in school for like, did you get this computation right? Congratulations, you just passed the 8th grade. Like what? That stuff has nothing to do with what we're doing, and it's such an unhealthy mindset for trying to be a lifetime creative. Like and I feel also, especially in America and especially in New York, I feel like there's this productivity drive. Maybe I would say even especially in the Jewish sectors of New York, of like always being productive, always doing something to kind of, and it's usually for nothing. It's just like, well, you got to be busy, you got to be doing stuff. Like it's this crazy neuroses that like I've been blessed with a little bit, and I'm trying to work through, but like it's like, hey, I did something. I moved the needle forward on this record today. I'm present now with my kid. Like, just like accepting that like whatever you've done is enough today. And it's really hard, I think, coming from that New York background that I've come from. And I imagine yours is probably not too different. Of like, you got to be doing stuff. You know what I mean? And feeling validated just even by being busy. Which is so dumb.
New York has that. I think New York has that better than, it makes it one of the most busiest, hustle forward places in the world, if not the epicenter, because it's like that city has like New York City has a pulse. Like it just goes on and on. It's about hustle culture and working hard and, being parents of immigrants. Like I've seen them work incredibly hard. So I think that just like bleeds into like even more like, chances to like work hard, but like actually kind of see the fruits of the labor. That's why I feel like I'm like, okay, I'm working hard, but am I working smarter so that this makes sense? Like I don't want to work a lot and then have nothing to show for. But like you were saying, you have parameters. Like you're like, hey, that move the needle forward on this record, on this mix, and then you also, have a kid, and you're like, stay present for that, because it's the work-life balance is not. It's something that you have to make happen. Like I used to think, in this business there was no work-life balance. My sister said, yeah, there is. You just have to enforce it. Like,
yes,
there's people I know who enforce work. They'll say, hey, I'm not working on Sunday. I'm not working on Saturday. I'm not working after 5 p.m. I'm not gonna work anymore. And I think for us, because of how the business is, it's like you don't want to miss an opportunity.
Right, the FOMO, fear of missing out. Yeah.
It's not even that, but it's like some of the greatest things that's happened to me, like in my career, has just been spontaneous. And I'm like, well, what if I were doing something and it took up my time from being spontaneous? Just because I was just available, boom, a record came in, and I was like, I could do it. You know what I mean?
I think there's seasons. That's the thing. I think it's seasons, right? Like when you're in your 20s, you can be more available to kind of just drop everything on a dime and do whatever to kind of make something happen.
Yeah.
When you're in your 30s already, it's much, much harder. Yeah. Maybe it gets easier again in your like late 40s or something. I don't know, but like I'm almost like forced into this work-life balance because, and it's actually been one of the best things for me is when I moved the studio into my home. So my son gets home from daycare at like 4:30. That's like just like that's it. My day is over at 4:30 from working with the client and from recording vocals.
Yeah.
Sorry, like my son's gonna be like screaming in the next room or just demanding my attention. It's over. Like that's it. And so like it's kind of forced me into this really cool rhythm of I just end my day really early and then sometimes I come back in at night to kind of patch things up. And it's not like a full. I don't have like 9 to 5 or stay late at the office. Like I'm in here until I know I can't be, and then maybe if I haven't done everything, I come back in. You know what I mean? So or if I have a podcast, but it's like moving it into my home and being a dad and having a son coming home has just forced me into this kind of work-life balance, which has been, I really like it. Like, it's like it's been an interesting kind of rhythm. Like, who knows, how long it'll last for, or what will be, but right now I'm kind of enjoying this kind of hybrid work-life balance approach, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I mean, that's like the best way to see it, is that you have a life. Like, you have kind of like, you're drawing the line. You're like, I will do this up until this point. And then, but when you do come into work, you at least know that you don't have so much time on your hands that you're basically messing around. So then you're hyper focused.
Right.
You're like, I know exactly what needs to get done, and I'm going to find that also makes for the best art sometimes when you have like a deadline. You're like, oh shit, I have no time to mess around with this. I can't
putz around.
Yeah.
Let's go.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm so with you. Yeah, it's true. And like, since I've moved the studio in here, when I'm in here, it's go time. I'm not really wasting time in this room. I'm just like doing stuff I need to do.
Yeah.
Like, and then that feeds the habit of this room being a place where I just come in to do stuff, and not just a room that I come in and mess around with. And sometimes I miss that kind of like spontaneous, let's mess around with a plugin, or let's just do, like, come up with a cool chord progression or something. Like, that doesn't happen as much as it used to. But overall, like, I'm doing what I have to do,
Yeah, exactly.
This is awesome, man. Let's circle back to the Atmos thing. So I've been asking,
a million people.
There's a bit of like a really jagged 90-degree turn here, but I'm kind of trying to get the lay of the land and see if this is really something that's kind of going to take off. I'm like, I guess maybe I'm a skeptic. It's like, it's interesting. I'm hearing things about NFTs. I'm excited. And then I'm like, this is kind of stupid. Yeah. And I feel very much the same way about Atmos. It's like, this is kind of cool. This is kind of stupid. Like, I don't know. Where are you at with the whole thing?
Anyone who's doing it right now, you are going to get more work. In a sense, you're going to get maybe more label work. There's people who are billing more, to do Atmos mixes. Personally, I've listened to a few Atmos rooms, and I've even listened to an Atmos Tesla. And I kind of feel like Atmos makes sense when there's a massive screen, when you could look at a visual like a movie. It seems like a movie format that they're trying to turn into an audio format. People are like, oh, it sounds incredible. I'm like, yeah, you have localized speakers doing one thing. You may have one speaker just doing some panning over your head. And, I think music, the way that we do it, like stereo mixing and things like that, seems very natural and very like directional. Everything seems like it's cohesive in its place. And I feel like Atmos sounds like, the S1 from Waves. Atmos sounds like an S1 that's been totally panned, like totally like the width has been 100%, where it's like so wide, but it's so narrow in the middle. Like you lose a lot of depth because you're creating so much space.
Yeah. Do you think it's because people haven't been mixing Atmos long enough, or you think it's inherent with the format itself?
I think both, and then also I think certain things probably won't sound good in Atmos, only because there's just not enough information. Like, what if you're doing an Atmos of an old, Blue Note record where there's only like how many tracks? Like, how is that gonna, I think most people are not thinking about producing an Atmos. That might be cool. Like,
I had somebody on the air tell me that as an idea, and I was like, oh, now you're thinking.
In Atmos.
Do you know Willie Green?
I heard of him.
Do you know Willie Green?
I heard of him.
He's based out of Brooklyn. He's cool. He was the one that said it on the air. You should reach out to him. He's cool.
Yeah. I was like, okay, that could be a cool way to use it in a creative way, where a producer is like thinking of some like synth pads, and they're like, oh shit, I could literally play it here, and then we could like pan it right here, right now, and see how it goes. Mm-hmm. But I don't know if it makes the music experience better. I don't know. It makes it very. You're like, oh, you could feel the music. You're like, obviously you're into music, and music is literally there's speakers surrounding you. But I don't know if it's more impressive or not. I think going to like a jazz concert, going like Carnegie Hall, like that's impressive. But I said, is this any different than 7.1? Is this just a different version of that? And I don't know. But I do know that a lot of people some people are taking advantage of it, and they're doing Atmos mixes, and